Nancy Pelosi is going to be keeping her spot as the most powerful woman ever in the history of Congress. Her fellow Democrats reelected her as House Speaker yesterday. And now the second most powerful Democratic woman in congressional history is from right here in Massachusetts. Katherine Clark was elected as Assistant Speaker, having somewhat quietly risen through the ranks over her 3 terms in office, reportedly earning the nickname the silent assassin along the way. But Clark is not the only Massachusetts leader whose political power may grow in size come January. As President-elect Joe Biden moves forward with his transition to the White House, albeit with little to no cooperation from the current administration, there's been speculation he might look to a few people from our state to fill some key positions. With speculation surrounding his longtime friend, Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, Attorney General Maura Healey, and even Republican Governor Charlie Baker, among others. Joining me to discuss all of this are Stephanie Murray, author of the Politico Massachusetts Playbook, and Boston Globe reporter Jess Bidgood. Stephanie and Jess, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hello.
Jess, let me start with you. For viewers who may not be steeped in congressional minutia, or for hosts who might not be steeped in congressional minutia, can you offer a quick primer on the difference between Clark's old role in the House and this new role that she's going to be taking on?
Sure. So Katherine Clark of Melrose spent last term as the vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Basically, the big difference between that position and the assistant speakership that she was just elected to earlier this week, a key difference is rank. Katherine Clark is going to be the 4th highest ranking Democrat in the House. That makes her the most powerful Congresswoman ever from Massachusetts. It also makes this the first time that we will see 2 women in leadership in the top 4 slots in leadership in the House. The assistant speaker job is somewhat new. It only got its current name in 2018, but it really puts her on track to rise further once the 3 octogenarians who currently lead the House retire from their leadership role, which we are expecting will happen somewhat soon.
I told you before we started taping that I was going to ask you if the outcome was a foregone conclusion here. And I do want to get you to talk about that. But also, what's up with this silent assassin moniker?
So Representative Clark, I think the reason that she gets that name is this. She has a pretty low-key style. She's not someone who necessarily kind of came into Congress and everybody who came into Congress with a particularly brash leadership style or anything like that. But she really gets to know her members. She spent a lot of time recruiting new members, a lot of time going to their districts, understanding what votes are going to be tough for them to take, what votes they can manage. And it is through building those relationships that she has also built a great deal of power and support in the House. She may not be the flashiest member of the delegation. She may not be the best known representative, but she's someone who has kind of swiftly, but somewhat under the radar, accrued quite a bit of power. So I think that's where that name comes from.
And did everyone know she was going to get this job, or was this, if not a surprise, then something around which there was uncertainty?
So she was running against Representative David Cicilline from Rhode Island, who has been in the House a little bit longer than her. Clark is only finishing up her 3rd full term in the House. And Cicilline has been making his own rise through House leadership too, and I think was seen as a fairly strong candidate. But ultimately, it wasn't terribly close. Katherine Clark got more than 130 votes. Cicilline came in at less than 100.
Okay, thanks. Stephanie Murray, we are in the midst of this ongoing national debate, or Democrats nationally are in the midst of this ongoing debate about what the future of their party should be, whether the party didn't do as well as expected in this year's elections because they tacked too far to the left, whether that's the right diagnosis or the wrong diagnosis. In the current national spectrum of Democrats, with sort of progressive idealists like AOC and Bernie Sanders, maybe Elizabeth Warren on one end, and centrists or pragmatists on the other, where does Katherine Clark fit?
She kind of fits right in the middle, which I think makes her the right fit for the job that she just won. Like Jess said, she is the silent assassin. She's also a coalition builder. I think about, the initiatives that she's worked on recently, proposing, bailing out the childcare industry to help during the coronavirus pandemic. She was also a key person on the DCCC, which is that key kind of campaign committee that helps Democrats win their House elections. She was a co-chair of their Red to Blue program, helping Democrats flip seats from Republican to Democrat in the 2018 midterm when there was a blue wave and Democrats won back the House. And so I think she's kind of uniquely positioned to kind of bridge the gap between those two sides of the party that are fighting pretty intensely right now.
And Stephanie just alluded to this earlier, but is the assumption now that if she's one of the top four Dems and Pelosi, the speaker, is on the way out, is she now either the favorite or one of a couple favorites to become the next Speaker of the House when Pelosi's gone?
I think that's absolutely the case. Another is Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York. But, as we said earlier, you can expect kind of that big top three of leadership to be on their way out at some point over the next few years. And Katherine Clark is in the number 4 position in the House. She is low key, but she's just amassed quite a bit of power over the past 2 decades. I think it was back in 2006. She was still on the school committee in Melrose. So this has all happened pretty quickly.
That is such a great detail. I remember talking to her, I think, when she was a state senator, maybe, so not quite that far back. But yeah, that's a rapid rise, but a methodical one, as you both have said. All right, let's talk about all the other people whose names have been floated, not for new leadership positions in Congress, but for possible roles in a Biden administration. Can I get the two of you to just rattle off all the different people we've heard about? I mentioned Charlie Baker and Marty Walsh at the outset. Who else is in the mix here, potentially?
Well, where do you start, right? And I want to be clear that what we're talking about here is speculation, is names that have been floated by the media, by other Democrats, there's a big universe of people who are talked about as potential cabinet picks. And they range from Warren, as you said, to Mayor Walsh, to Governor Raimondo of Rhode Island. Sometimes Stephen Lynch's name comes up.
As Postmaster General, perhaps, right? That's his possible role, allegedly?
Yes, potentially.
Potentially. So Maura Healey, hasn't her name frequently, Stephanie, I learned about this stuff by reading your newsletter in the morning. Is Healey one of the people who's been talked about as well?
Yeah, she is. She's perhaps best known around the country as one of the attorney generals who sued Donald Trump's administration the most over the past 4 years. So she comes up as a possible person who could serve in the Department of Justice. There are reports out today that former Governor Deval Patrick might also be somebody who could be tapped for the DOJ. And this is important, it's speculation, people putting their names in the mix, other people putting their names in the mix, but it's kind of like a choose your own adventure. If Elizabeth Warren serves in a Biden administration role, then her Senate seat opens up and there's a huge race to replace her. If Governor Baker goes to the Biden administration, then that 2022 governor's race, he's so popular, if he runs again, he'll probably have a lock on it. If he leaves, perhaps a Democrat could take his place. The mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, he's up for re-election in 2021. If he leaves, another huge race. So if anybody leaves from Massachusetts, it'll be one person or no one, but any of them would kind of have a seismic impact on the state.
All right, so let me ask the two of you go ahead, Jess, please.
Oh, I was going to say that impact is part of the reason that it could be harder for some of them to get these appointments. I think there's some concern about if Warren were named to a cabinet post, what happens to her Senate seat, right? Whereas Governor Patrick, for example, if he goes into a cabinet position, he's not vacating a spot in elected office, and that could simplify things for the Biden administration a little bit.
Let me ask the two of you, is it really realistic? I've heard Baker's name mentioned, again, have probably read it in things the two of you have written. How realistic is that? I know that Joe Biden wants to be this unifying bipartisan figure, but Baker has made it very clear that he sees himself, I think he's made it clear that he sees himself as sort of a guardian of traditional Republican principles in a moment in which they are under assault. We've obviously got this bizarre liminal period going on now between the Trump presidency and President-elect Joe Biden's coming presidency. But is it realistic at all to think that Baker would want to leave this state and serve in a Democratic administration, do you think?
That's the big question. Governor Baker, he was asked about this, and he said that he plans on serving the rest of his term, which ends in 2022. But on the other hand, he's one of the few Republican governors around the country who are willing to kind of work with the Biden administration. He was on a bipartisan call with President-elect Joe Biden today with Democratic and Republican governors. There are some governors in this country who haven't, acknowledged the results of the election. So Baker, the Republican Party, as you said, is going to kind of have to go through a sort of soul-searching moment now that President Donald Trump has lost, and maybe Baker will see an opportunity to take up a more national mantle in the party. And I should note that he also has Democrats in his administration as governor, so that bipartisan piece is important to him.
That's a really good point. He's kind of modeled that here, so you could see him doing it nationally. All right, Jess, you get the last word here. If you had to predict the person or identify the person most likely to head to Washington. Well, I lied. We'll ask both of you. Jess, who is it? And then Stephanie, you get the last word.
Gosh, I am not sure. I think at this moment there are so many names being floated, and there's so much speculation. It's really hard to say. But I would keep your eye on all of these names and some that we haven't mentioned, like Juliette Kayyem, who I know appears on GBH from time to time. There's a lot of names out there. There's a lot of political talent in this state. And it's very possible we see someone end up in the administration. Stephanie,
can I get you to stick your neck out and identify a favorite, as Jess wisely chose not to do?
I will say I think the hardest person to get a job in the Biden administration, with a lot of buzz, is probably Senator Elizabeth Warren. So I'll take your question and flip it out on its head, especially if Republicans hold control over the Senate, which we'll know once the runoffs in Georgia are finished. I think it'll be really tough to get her through the confirmation process through the Senate if Mitch McConnell's in charge.
All right, I'll take it. Stephanie Murray, Jess Bidgood, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.